Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service of Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father J. Friedel.
Hi, welcome back to Faith in Our Hometown. I'm Father J. Friedel, pastor of St. Peter the Apostle Catholic Church, and I'm here today with a couple of guests. James Whitford, who's the executive director of Water Gardens Gospel Rescue Mission here in Joplin, and also for the first time on our show, Dr. Sara Chaney, Reverend Dr. Sara Chaney, who is the pastor of Neosho United Methodist Church. And so welcome to the two of you this morning. Last week, we were talking a little bit about the poor. What's our response to the poor? How do we respond as a church? James and I started to mix it up a little bit toward the end of the segment about what's the role of government and how that was going to work. Today, Sarah's joining us, and we're going to kind of continue our conversation from last week. We'll do a brief introduction after we get back, and after that, we'll get back into our discussions about how do we care for the poor and where to go. And we'll be right back after this Mercy Minute.
Hi, I'm Angie Saprito with Mercy Hospital. I'm here today with Dr. Anand Afane. Dr. Afane, you are a rheumatologist with Mercy Hospital, is that correct?
Yes.
What does that mean? What does a rheumatologist do?
So rheumatology usually deals with evaluating and treating autoimmune diseases where the body attacks itself, mainly rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, vasculitis, scleroderma. We also treat a lot of joint diseases, joint pain, gout, osteoarthritis, and many other autoimmune diseases as well.
There's a big need for that in this area, I know. Are you accepting patients right now?
Yes, we are accepting new patients, and we schedule them within a week or so at the moment.
And do they need a referral?
They do need a referral from their primary care, and they can just call our office and we'll get them in as soon as we can.
Perfect. If you want to find out more, you can call the number that's on your screen, or you can also visit us at mercy.net.
Hi, I'm Father J. Friedel. Welcome back to Faith in Our Hometown. I'm here with James Whitford and Sara Chaney. We're talking a little bit about the poor and whose job is it to take care of the poor. Sara, you watched the show last week. James and I were here by ourselves last week. Where would you like to start today?
Well, I'm thinking, I had a couple of reflections as I watched the show. One was that that difference between how the government and the church approach the poor is that the church really has a little bit more freedom in approaching the poor and has a little bit different motivation. The government has to be very certain that they are fair in treating everybody the same and making sure that everybody has a specific standard of care or as best they can. And whereas the church, we're not only called to feed the poor, we're called to, what's that word from the gospel text? To proclaim good news to the poor. Yeah, I think it's coming up. Well, it's, yes, you know that one, right?
Yeah, I think we do. I think all
Proclaiming
of us do.
good news,
Yeah.
which isn't just good news like newspaper good news, it's inspiration. We have a role of inspiration and a role of hopefulness, that we're able to inspire hope in people, and that isn't necessarily the role of government,
right,
but it is the role of the church. And so we have freedom to be a little bit more flexible in that regard. I guess, so I was thinking that we needed a little more distinction between government and church. Our denomination, the United Methodist denomination, is clear about the separation of church and state, but there is some places where we overlap. And one of those is a belief in serving the basic needs of the people, making sure that people are fed and clothed and housed to a humane standard. So that common ground, I think, is significant as to where the government and the churches both overlap. But the ways we go about it and the motivation for going about it may be a little bit different. It's all, well, is that a place to start? I think that's kind of.
I think that in some ways, we didn't talk about this much last week, but I really do believe that, again, for us, these are us trying to follow gospel principles. I mean, all three of us are Christian. All of us are trying to follow gospel principles. We're trying to follow Jesus's, mandates to care for one another. That great, scene, that great, the sheep and the goats, at the end of Matthew's gospel, where he's like basically saying, which side do you want to be on? okay? That's a challenge. And of course,
That's
we want to
right.
make sure that we're on the side that has responded to our brothers and sisters in need. So all of us can agree, I think, on that principle, no problem. And you're right, I don't know that I would say it's not their role, because I really think that in some ways it's written into some of our standards as the United States, but I will say that the churches have a higher standard. I mean, I just believe we have a higher standard because we have to, try to encourage people with the good news. We have to do that, and I appreciate you bringing
right.
that, tossing that perspective. We did start there the last time, but we kind of, we just rolled from there.
Yep.
But
yep.
I mean, I think that's a good common ground for all of us. Again, sometimes some different approaches in the way that we'll engage it, but still, I hold the church to a higher standard, even than I hold the government.
Well, yeah, I think that, Sarah's kind of alluded to this, but it's a primary mandate that God has given his people to care for those in need. And I'm thinking of, a beautiful passage in Isaiah chapter 58 where God calls his people not only to feed the hungry and clothe the naked and shelter the poor, but he says in Isaiah 58:10 that we're supposed to extend our souls, or some versions say give yourself to the hungry. And so God's calling us beyond, feeding a belly or clothing a back. He really is wanting us to invest a portion of the life that he's given us to another person. And that is something that certainly the church is built to do.
Yeah. One of the great sayings of St. Vincent de Paul, and there is a St. Vincent de Paul Society here in town. I don't know whether, do they have one down at St. Canaries in Neosho?
Well, the priest, Father Derek, is
right. He's a Vincentian, right? Sure.
Yeah.
Well, one of the great sayings of St. Vincent de Paul is when he was because he would work. I mean, he had great relationships with all the wealthy women of the area, and he was getting them to, bring their extra bread, and he was getting them to do all that, so figuring out how to share. And so he was really working that principle of saying, okay, you guys got to go out and do this. But Vincent also said, but when you go to do it, when you do it, you got to love them so much that they'll even forgive you for giving them their bread. And I think it's always stuck with me, that saying that says, wow, not only are we called to do this in gospel values, but how do you give yourself, and how do you give yourself in such a way, and I just don't hear that in the conversation these days. All I hear in the conversation is, well, everyone wants what I've got, and they don't deserve this, and I don't, and I'm just like, I just don't know that we're ever not going to have, as Jesus said, the poor among us. And so how do we get our attitudes right in how to help them? Regardless of how we engage it or how we get it done, how do we get our attitudes right in terms of saying, I mean, I guess I was just raised to believe that there were people who were going to need some of what I had, and that I was expected to share it with them. I was just raised that way.
And the definition of poor, is it the one who doesn't have material goods, or is it the one who has no grace of spirit, who doesn't have an abundance of spirit, who is lacking that? And a stingy person. Yes, I think.
Is that the right answer? I'm just checking.
I kind of convoluted the sentence.
You did.
But anyway, it's kind of, is it the one who, perhaps the poorest is the one who is the stingiest, as opposed to the one who is willing to share?
That's such a key thing. I mean, how are we defining poverty? We have a U.S. government definition of poverty, a family of 4 under, $20-some-odd thousand per year, but I'm not sure that's really a good definition of poverty.
Right.
I remember being in Haiti and meeting people who had far less than that, but seemed to thrive in their spirit, producing things and selling them in markets, and seemed to have great joy. And so it would be hard to say, of a person like that they're poor. So I think that's a key thing to consider.
And it's a good reason why groups from churches and various groups go to other countries and see the poor who have so much less than we do. But what those folks come back saying is that they received so much, and they may have had more material goods. Certainly, we're pretty much a consumer society. We've got a lot of stuff. But when they go to
Right.
Haiti or the Bahamas or the various places and serve the poor there, what they find is the children and the folks there are so happy that they receive a sense of joy and of not needing as much.
Right.
Did that make sense?
Oh, it made perfect sense. And again, my big thing I always just say is we will take take campus ministry students or whatever from
Yes.
the university at Missouri
Yes.
Southern on service trips and things like that. But the thing I keep reminding them of is, you don't have to go to Haiti to find the poor.
Right.
You can find them right here in Joplin.
Absolutely.
You can find them right here in Missouri. The folks are everywhere. And again, there's a difference between not having a lot, but there's also that line that we get to deal with people all the time that don't have enough to meet their daily needs. Not
Yes.
enough food. Kids going to bed hungry. And we just got to stay attuned to that.
Well-
And how do we serve those needs?
The kids, which our church has an undie Sunday. It's kind of embarrassing, but
Oh, my.
I don't know. Should I talk about this on TV?
You started. Now you're going to have to
I've
explain
gotta
it, or we're going to be
explain
in big
it.
trouble.
We gather underwear for one of the local schools because sometimes kids just need some really
Sure.
basic kinds of things. And so at Christmas we provide hats and gloves, or we gather it together and we give it to the school, and they get the fun of passing it out. And we have folks who will knit or crochet 60 hats for the local central school, and but in the fall, we we collect underwear for kids of all ages. I know it sounds weird,
No,
but
it's a
it's a
need.
basic necessity, and kids very much appreciate it.
Oh, sure. I think the challenge is, and the thing that the faith community should really think about is how do we move from that important relief, which it is, how do we help people move from a continual need of relief to restoration and development? And that's it's a tougher road to hoe, but it's certainly the one that I think that God would call us to. How is it that we're really going to help not do more than just alleviate poverty for a moment's time, but how do we really help people resolve poverty in their own lives? And that's where the relationship development comes in, and extending oneself to another, and even thinking about how to challenge people in the right ways. Things we were talking about last week.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's that's an interesting mix. We always talk about it as the 2 feet of social justice. The one is, what are the Band-Aids that need to be put on right now?
Yep.
But then there are some other things, and this is probably beyond the scope that we can even do this show, but there's that other foot of social justice that basically talks about how do we change the system to make it a little bit better for some people to be able to make it. How do we help people really truly out of poverty in ways that are going to help them to do that, and in ways that are sustainable.
Yes.
And those are sometimes tricky issues. And again, I know a lot of people with a lot of goodwill have a lot of different opinions about the way to do some of those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's requires thoughtfulness and attention to each person.
Yeah. And again, that's one of the things we really resonated with last week is when you're not in the trenches and you don't know the people and you don't really work with people, it's really hard to know sometimes the best way to help.
right.
Sarah, I mean, we got just a few seconds here before we go for a little bit of a break. What kind of stuff's going on in Neosho with some of those things?
We've got some great things going on. We've got 20 people going to the Bahamas in May on a mission trip. So they're collecting school books actually to take with them, as well as doing all kinds of work. But in Neosho, we've got the Hope Kitchen, which just opened recently. We serve Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays a free meal. In the evening, a lot of the churches are gathered together to prepare the meal.
Okay, I'm going to stop you now. This is Faith in Our Hometown. We'll be right back.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service of Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Okay, Sarah, I just got you stopped for a second there. You said, I loved it. You said you knew to stop my hands, and then I stopped talking. I always tease my people that if I ever something's wrong with my hands, I'll be talking like this because I won't know what to do. So go ahead, finish. So you got your trip to the Bahamas.
Which
really sounds racy in terms of
I know,
mission trip.
but they really are. They really are, and it's a wonderful trip, and it's two different. First Christian and the Methodist Church are combining to do that. But just on an annual basis, just what happens is, I know our men have a real serious commitment to feeding the hungry, and they gather 80,000 pounds of potatoes every year and distribute them to all of the food banks. They work with the Society of St. Andrews, which is a food ministry, and they'll go and glean the fields in the local area, and usually corn, sometimes potatoes, but and then distribute that food to the food pantries in southern Newton County. Primarily. Sometimes it comes up here, but Noel Anderson.
And those are some of those old biblical principles
Yes.
that sometimes my people sound absolutely shocked sometimes when I start talking about the fact that God always demanded that some of this be left over for the poor. I mean,
That's right.
Where have you been hiding? Because I'm like, I'm just shocked when they say, well, what do you mean gleaning laws? What do you mean? What do you mean? And I'm just like, well, God actually said, leave some around the perimeter for the poor to come and to be able to do. Now,
That's
again,
right.
There's that whole business about that they need to come and to do it. Okay.
True.
And again,
And they
there's some
can
good
help.
things there, and they
That can be part of it.
but some of it was left intentionally so that those folks could come and gather. Well, we don't live in that kind of a society anymore. And so again, how do we figure out ways or mechanisms where some of the excess can be shared with those who need? And again, that's where I say, I'm willing to do the part of the church, but I also want to make sure that the government is somewhat involved in making sure that we do that on a larger basis. Now, granted, I would argue with them on terms of distribution methods and the way to do some of it, because I think that sometimes I think we are a little bit better designed to help them with that. But at the same time, I want them involved in the process because I think it's good for us. The same way I think it's good for people who have biblical values and want to follow those biblical notions. Yeah. I think it's good for us as a country. It's good for us as Americans.
That's
it's
right.
good for us as U.S. citizens to again realize the duty to serve the common good in some ways.
I think I think one of the problems that, and we've talked about this a little bit, but the importance of relationship with that individual that you're helping and understanding a little bit about what's going on is important so that we don't foster dependency in someone. Right. And so this is where I think we see a real breakdown with the state's involvement in helping the poor, is that there's not really the relationship development that the church is called to, and often the church wants to do. And as a result of that, I think we end up seeing people kind of trapped and on a system, dependent upon a system. And so I'm thinking of a book written by Robert Lupton called Toxic Charity. And it's a great read, but he really is asking the question, can our charity be toxic? And in fact, can our welfare system be toxic? Sure. And he says, when you give something to somebody once, they appreciate it, but if you give them the same thing again, they'll have an anticipation that you'll do it a third time. If you do it a third time, they'll have an expectation that you'll do it a fourth. If you do it a fourth time, they'll feel entitled to it, and a fifth time dependent upon it. Right. So he says there's 5 steps to dependency, and I think I see that a lot at the mission, Father Jay. I think I really do. I see people who have materially more than what, say, someone in Haiti or a developing nation might have, and yet they seem less happy, more oppressed, and dependent upon all sorts of government subsidy and things that just that don't seem to be really resolving the issue of poverty in a person's life.
And on the counter side of that, yes. I would also say I've seen people who, frankly, would probably starve if we weren't continuing to give them some food from time to time. Or if, say I've got a parent who just can't keep their act together and they've got kids. Well, what am I going to do? Am I going to let the kids starve because the parent can't keep their act together? And right. So I'm, I understand there's going to be some people that are going to be dependent, and I'm willing to accept that as a person who does charity. Okay, now if I can find the ones that I can make the improvement in, and get them to do it, yes, then I'm all for that. Yeah. But I'm just saying that in some cases, I'm not going to be able to get them to make that shift. And so I'm still going to make sure that the kids have got food, and so that's why, and again, that we started feeding them before school and doing those things.
That's
all
right.
right, that's a government, all right. But at the same time, at least now I know that those kids are getting the food, and maybe some of the parents who may not live up to all of their parental expectations the way we think that they should, that their kids are still getting fed. And so, I will look at some of those things, in that regard, and try to balance it.
And I think part of our common ground is that sense of God's great abundant grace, and that some of it's going to spill over to people who don't deserve it, kind of like you and me.
Yeah.
And,
Guilty.
And that's going to be true of those who are poor. There's going to be food that's distributed, and maybe they don't deserve it, or maybe they didn't earn it, but they're still hungry, and perhaps there's a lesson in that.
Because James, I think you make a great point when you say that when sometimes those folks will learn how to do some of those things, their lives are just filled with so much more grace because they know that they're doing it. Yeah. And sometimes they know that they're doing it for the first time in their lives. Yeah. And seeing those things, it's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just absolutely amazing watching somebody who suddenly reached down deep and realized what they were capable of and set forward and did it. Yeah. And the pride, the good pride that they can take in making those changes in their lives is worth so much.
Sure.
When you're in a helping profession, when you're in a helping area, and you can do that, it does make all the difference in the world. Yeah. And I'm sure you could tell tons of success stories.
Oh yes, I'm thinking of one right now. I'll just share a quick one.
Yes.
Go
just
for
thinking, just what you were saying reminded me of a single mother who's in our mission, and at Christmas time, it would have been easy to just go to wherever and get a Christmas gift for her kids, handed to the kids, but we had a shop where she could shop for a Christmas gift and then earn the gift, and her comment was just incredible. In fact, she ended up saying something like, I've learned that I have self-worth here, and that I am someone, and that I'm loved. And she said, and now I love myself, and I am strong. And I'll never forget those words.
Sure.
They were just powerful. And some of that happens because of the relationship development, and really just esteeming someone worthy of the ability to earn something that they need. And not everybody can just go to work, and we've talked about that. But it is important to just get as close as we can to understanding what's really going on in an individual's life. Last week we were talking about, actually you mentioned the importance of maybe charities and churches being able to talk together about the people that they're helping. Right. And one of the breakdowns with church and state in doing this role of helping the poor is that the state has not really, with our charity network, is not communicating information that would be helpful for us to know. So we might know that, well, yes, there are people that are getting fed, but we really don't know who and how much that would not only empower us to know more to help that person, but also steward our resource more effectively. Right. So there's really a breakdown in all that. Again, one of the reasons why I tend to argue for let local community and church be the first responders to people in need before the state. So.
Yeah.
I would like to interject another factor, in that we've got the churches and the government and private nonprofits, the charities, but there's also the corporate world where it used to be the family farm that would leave the part of the field in order to be gleaned. Now we've got corporate farms and we've got corporations that are the ones who are providing the food, or those of us who think that chicken comes in plastic. Well, anyway,
yes.
The corporations also take seriously their responsibility to give back and to serve, or if all four of those parties could sit down at the table and work together to solve the problem, perhaps we would get further down the line of achieving the goal of feeding the hungry and of serving the poor. Because they play a huge role, not only in the surplus food that they can contribute to food banks, et cetera, but they employ folks, and there's lots of ways that they also help us address the issue of poverty, which is a broader issue. We're focusing on the feeding part, but the broader issue of employment, and which is where you're taking us to, is that next level of employability. Well, there's a few levels there up to employability and becoming productive, charitable citizens themselves.
Producers
Yeah.
instead of just consumers. You know?
And yet we always have to remember that each person is valuable no matter their ability to produce anything.
Sure.
So,
and again, when you've spent the time in the trenches, you do know that everybody's story is different. And you do know that that the challenges in one area become what would be easy for somebody else, it became crushing for that person in that situation at that particular moment in their lives. Or you're expected to go to work today, and unfortunately you're in that situation where it's the 3rd anniversary of your daughter's death, and you're incapacitated, and you do some of those things. It's a difficult place to be. It's hard work being a human being, and it's hard work keeping your act together.
Yes, it is.
And there is no doubt about those things. And of course, the only difference between us and many of the people we serve is that we might have gotten a little luckier. We might have been, had maybe a little better training. We maybe were just given a different set of gifts. And I think we just got to look at all those kinds of things when we come to do some of that.
Yes.
I've been enjoying the conversation. It's good. It's always good to get our hearts stretched a little bit and our minds stretched to go along with it. We do some important work, and it is important. We'll be right back after this Mercy Minute.
Hi, I'm Angie Separito with Mercy Hospital. I am here today with Dr. Jahan Zeb, interventional cardiologist at Mercy. Is that right?
That's correct.
What type of patients do you generally see?
We see patients with heart and vascular disease problems such as chest pain, shortness of breath, irregular heart rhythms.
And you do, being an interventional, what type of procedures do you do?
Interventional cardiology refers to procedures that are done non-surgically through a minimum invasive approach. They involve inserting catheters, which are thin flexible tubes in the arteries to diagnose and treat problems.
Minimally invasive means less recovery time, so that's good for everybody.
Correct.
Very good. And you're located in the clinic tower at the new hospital, right?
Correct.
Any referral?
No.
No referral. If you want to find out more, you can call the number on your screen or visit mercy.net.
Been talking with some of our local religious leaders, Sara Chaney, James Whitford, about the issue of poverty and how do we deal with the poor and how do we help them without hurting them. Which is an important thing. What are the challenges to us in being able to do that? One of the things that is a reality, especially with our current economic times and the challenges that are ours right now, is that we're still going to have folks around who need us. And we're trying to figure out for ourselves and for all those that we serve, whether they be our congregations, our people that we serve, or the poor in the area, how we do the best job that we can of doing right by God, of doing right by them, and doing right by each other. It's an interesting balancing act, and what all of us really are trying to do is to make sure that we're doing right by all of those constituents, and I think for those of us of faith-based organizations, certainly for God. So this is Faith in Our Hometown. Come back and see us next week.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. here on KSN. Brought to you as a community service by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.